Welcome to Soccer in 60, presented by the Empire Strykers. Get ready for your weekly look at all the pro soccer teams in Greater Los Angeles. We've got all the news and analysis you need, from LAFC and the LA Galaxy to the Empire Strykers, Angel City FC, and Orange County Soccer Club. Now, buckle up and enjoy Soccer in 60.
Welcome indeed to the fastest paced soccer show in SoCal, covering all the week's news, highlights, and more from LAFC, the Galaxy, Angel City, Orange County Soccer Club, and of course, the Major Arena Soccer League Zone Empire Strykers. This is Soccer in 60, brought to you by SAC Health System. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, their friendly neighborhood Scarf, J.R. Liebert, and of course, on the screen with me, two of our incredible team that covers soccer across the Southland. First and foremost, the Soccer in 60 OG himself, Orange County Soccer Club's very own Timmy K. Tim Kolatz. Welcome back to Soccer in 60.
Hey, good to see you, Scarf, after you taking a week off, being on the shelf, man. Good to see you, my friend.
So happy to be back and ready to roll, and so happy to be joined by one half of the Lacuna Galaxiana podcast, Ananda Karana. Ananda, welcome back to Soccer in 60.
Boys, good to be back as always.
Yeah, you know, it's a fun night across soccer in the Southland. Again, here on Soccer in 60, we aim to take you around all five major clubs like we talked about at the start. And all that means for this episode, 60 minutes, is 14 matches to either look back or look forward to, plus an interview with, look, he wears a lot of hats. I'm just going to take a line from Dos Equis and call him the most interesting man in indoor soccer. Empire Strykers 2025-2026 captain, defender, interim head coach, and do-it-all amazing human, Berto Palmer. Make sure you stick around for that interview with Berto. It was fantastic. Unfortunately, highlighting the end to the Empire Strykers season, but more on that in a little bit. In partnership with the Empire Strykers, experience the thrill of game day with Omnitrans. Be in the heart of the action at Toyota Arena and let Omnitrans take care of the ride. Simply download the Transit app to catch your bus and enjoy a stress-free trip to cheer on the Strykers. Don't miss out on the excitement and make every moment count at Toyota Arena. Ride with Omnitrans to your next Empire Strykers match. It's time to transition right into talking about the Los Angeles Galaxy. And it's a couple of tough results. Again, we so appreciate Ananda, one half of the Lacuna Galaxiana podcast, coming on with us. And this one is raw because we're actually recording this one right after the Toluca match just ended down in Toluca. But first, let's get to Landon Donovan night out at Dignity Health Sports Park. The atmosphere was electric. Landon in the building. But unfortunately, the result not quite there. But I think the Galaxy played really well in this one. Ananda, I want to get your take first. 19 shots created, 7 shots on target. You didn't allow a single corner from Minnesota, 9 for the Galaxy, 90% pass rate. But unfortunately, as has been the case, it's the tip of the spear that remains the toughest part. A 2-1 loss to Minnesota. I want to get your thoughts on what stalled the offense in this one for the Galaxy.
Yeah, simply put, a lack of confidence in front of net. And this has been the story of the Galaxy so far this season. Not executing in the final third, not finishing their dinner, especially when they have those chances. And then on the other end, Scarf, it's allowing sort of game breaking against the run of play type of goals that are demoralizing for a team like the Galaxy that are in a period of instability right now. You know, the results haven't been good enough. It's come to a point where you see a lot of chatter now online questioning Greg Vanney, questioning the front office. It's gotten to that point because the results are in there, even though statistically, like you said, Scarf, the data says that the Galaxy should win these games, but the results just are not there at the moment.
Yeah, let me ask you along that line of Greg Vanney questioning, right? Obviously, the extension was announced at the most inopportune moment for Greg Vanney. I think it was 11 games into the 15-match winless streak that extension was at. Peculiar timing either way on that one. And now, again, dealing with a second catastrophic injury to Ricky Pooch, right? You guys thought he'd be back at the start of this season. Rehab did not go well. He's injured again for all of this one. And I look at the numbers and I look at what Greg Vanney has to cook with in the kitchen. Obviously, they bring in Joao Klaus. But how much of this is going to fall on Greg Vanney's shoulders either way, even if a team plays tactically well, like it looks like they did, at least on paper, against Minnesota?
I mean, the reality of this business, Scarf, is it's a lot easier to fire one guy versus 22 or 25, right? And I think that's just the business and that's just the game. And ultimately, it's going to come down to that. And then you see, other coaching situations around the league with coaches that have long tenures that have been successful with their clubs. They're now no longer with their teams. You look like cases like Oscar Pareja, for example, right? And it's to a point now, Scarf, 6 games, only 5 points. You look at that team on paper for this Galaxy. I know JP is out. I know Glezis is not there. But you look at that team and say, this is a much better team than 12th on paper. And I think that's where the sort of frustration is coming from the fan base.
Yeah, I want to ask Tim and then Ananda back to you on this question as well. But Tim, if something happens and they fire Greg Vanney, does that signal to the fan base that they're listening to them or that the season is over? Or what does something like firing the coach? Let's just say it happens within the first 10 MLS matches of the season. You got much more to play, 25 plus games left in the season at that point. What does that signal to the support down in Carson about the club and about the direction that they're headed?
Well, I think Ananda hit on it. You got to win or you're out. I think the reality is Vanney has got a decent team, better than 12th. I don't think they're a top 5 team in the conference by any stretch. But the reality is you've got guys that could put the ball in the net, and they're not. Right? You look at a couple of opportunities in tonight's game. You look at a couple of opportunities in the Minnesota game, and they just didn't feast, and it's a little bit of a famine right now for the guys. And it's something that they need to fix within the next 2 games, or you may very well be right that Vanney is, gone home and has a, dinner at his house versus at the training club.
And Tim, you talk about tonight's game, and of course you're referring to the 4-2 loss in Toluca to Toluca as part of the first leg of the quarterfinals of the Galaxy's match with Toluca in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Obviously, Toluca, one of the class clubs of Liga MX, and really taking it to the Galaxy in the first half, down 2-0 at halftime. But let me ask you, Ananda, was Greg Vanney able to circle the wagons, able to rally the troops? Pick your phrase that you need there. But we're talking now, it wound up being a 4-2 result. So still, obviously, the 2-0 deficit was never overcome. But that is a much better performance in the second half.
Yeah, it's a much better performance, especially if you look at that stretch from about minute 60 to 75 or 80. And that's when the Galaxy poached their 2 goals there. And really, the subs made a huge difference with Greg, Scarf. It was especially with Marco Royce coming off the bench, with guys like Lucas Sanabria and Julian Aude. They really made the difference in that second half, especially Royce threading that ball through to Gabriel Peck for the first goal with a cheeky finish there. Honestly, goalkeeper probably should have done better in that near post. But yeah, I mean, look, for a stretch there, it did. But again, like 3-2, that -1 goal difference would have been a heck of a lot better. And you give up such a sloppy goal in the 85th minute. Garces goes to ground as he's been like really all game. And the defense just couldn't keep the ball out of the net. And again, this is these demoralizing goals that I was talking about earlier. End of halves, end of games. That's the story of the Galaxy this season.
Yeah, let me ask you one other question too before we look ahead to the match both in Austin and then the second leg back at home at Dignity Health Sports Park against Toluca. The 5 subs, obviously Marco Royce paying dividends, Justin Hack, and then they bring on Julian Aude, and then Lucas Sanabria and Cuevas. I want to get your thoughts on how the substitutes, if the substitutes other than Marco Royce, really affected the outcome or at least improved the outlook.
Yeah, well, for starters, Winder and some of the other guys were really gassed, the guys that came out. So they really needed that breather, that relief from their teammates. And look, Julian Audier, credit to him. I think it was the first or second goal. He made the extra effort, jumped into the play, and created that opening. I think it was for the second goal. I thought Mauricio Cuevas did some nice things. Like, I think he's such an attacking fullback. I like those attributes off the bench, especially when the defense is a bit leggy. The opposition defense is a bit leggy. And I think Sanabria, he's got to start in that midfield. I feel like the Galaxy are the best when the midfield trio includes Lucas Sanabria, his dueling capacity, his ranginess. We haven't really replaced Mark Delgado, and he's probably the closest thing to it. And boy, the Galaxy really missed that ranginess and that combative ability in the midfield.
Yeah, TBK, two big ones looking ahead for the Galaxy. It's kind of a trap game almost, right, against Austin in Austin, knowing that you're putting all your eggs in the CONCACAF Champions Cup basket just a couple of days later at Dignity Health Sports Park. Timmy, what are you expecting from the lineup and from the effort in Austin, knowing what you've got coming right after that?
Yeah, I think you got to, cycle in some of these guys. I think Sanabria's got to get the start against Austin. I think Royce has got to get the start against Austin. And I think you've got to put a lot of the guys that were the subs, Aude and those guys, you got to put them in the starting lineup against Austin, because at the end of the day, the season MLS should take priority, but we know it's not going to because of just the circumstances. But I think if you do that, then you can cycle in against Toluca in leg number 2. And if you win leg number 2-0, you advance.
And that's the key, right? We want to remind everybody, away goals is the first tiebreaker. So Galaxy, with those 2 away goals, look, it's going to be made real tough if Toluca gets on the board early, but plenty to play for. It is not at all out of the realm of possibility that Galaxy are able to steal one at home at Dignity Health Sports Park. All right, let's transition to another club where we've got 4 matches to look at. Of course, that being LAFC. A little bit of a different tenor to the week. And again, I'm not trying to poke at Ananda at all. He is gracious enough to stay on with us for both of these clubs, and we so appreciate that you do. But 2 wins, 9 goals, none allowed, an incredible week for LAFC. But let's just talk first and foremost, Timmy K. That is an awful Orlando club that LAFC took behind the woodshed 6-0. Let's not blow how important 3 points is out of proportion. 3 points any way you can get them is great. And getting that Sonny and Bawanga connection back on. I mean, Timmy K, it was nice to see the band getting back together after we hadn't seen that from LAFC since the end of last season.
Yeah, just ask Ananda at how much 3 points value at this early in the season, right? But
yeah.
To put them, you and I were texting during the game, and I'm like, they're blowing them out, and you said the same thing, But the bigger thing was LAFC really came to play, because you talk about trap games, right? You could easily walk into Orlando and just look dumb and leave with a draw, right? I'm not saying you're going to lose against Orlando, but you could have easily during that game. And they just went and whacked them early and often. And to go up to get that victory 6-0 and to play as well as they did, this is a testament to the team and the coaching staff over at LAFC.
Yeah, and what you hope for as an LAFC supporter is that you can put the game away early so that you can begin to focus on Cruz Azul even during the Orlando match. And Ananda, going up, 4-0 after 28 minutes, a Denis Bawanga hat trick in less than 9 minutes of play from the 20th to the 28th. What that allowed them to do is to really start to set their lineup and set their rotations for Cruz Azul, even in the second half of this Orlando match.
Yeah, and that's super important because, I mean, based off of LAFC's form, they're going to go pretty deep in the CCC, it looks like. And they're going to go, obviously, all the way till October or whenever MLS Cup is. I mean, this is probably, I've seen it around the social scarf, that LAFC is the best MLS team right now by far, like by a mile. Just by the way they're playing, not only offensively, but defensively. They're just, everything is coming together. Every time I've watched maybe like a couple of halves of the last couple of games, Scarf, and just the continuity, the way you guys enter the final third with speed and with intent. As looking at this from the other side of the aisle, that's that's a huge difference. Like it's night and day actually watching both teams from LA. So that's something to be commended. But now you just got to keep it going. You got to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, it's a long season. We're talking 50 to 55 matches if LAFC gets everywhere that they want to get this season. Something that's certainly going to help is what we saw in the second half. The Maple Messi himself, Jacob Schaffelberg, getting to play in his first match of the season. He had pelvic surgery, and just saying that makes my stomach turn over before the start of the season, right when LAFC acquired him. And he registered an assist to Tyler Boyd for goal number 6. It was a beautiful cross. Boyd did the rest of the work on a header that he put, just past a rough day for former keeper for LAFC, Maxime Crepeau. Really felt badly for him. Edward Atuesta didn't look like he wanted to be there after 20 minutes either. I felt particularly bad for Martin Perelman, the coach who'd been on duty for 25 days. You mentioned they fired Oscar Pareja. You see why. These guys look like they've quit. Perlman and an assistant under Pareja. But for LAFC to get a player the likes of Jacob Schaffelberg now healthy, I mean, you're talking about having a guy like Jeremy Abobasi, who has, dozens of MLS goals under his belt coming off the bench. A player like Nathan Ordaz, who we saw so much out of last season. David Martinez has basically relegated him to the bench for most of this season with the way that he is playing. More on David Martinez in a minute. And now you bring in a player the likes of Jacob Schaffelberg, a Canadian men's national team striker who is looking to improve his chances and show that the Canadian men's national team player is healthy and ready to go for the World Cup. It's an embarrassment of riches. And, oh, by the way, Hugo Lloris continues to keep clean sheets in between the sticks. And that's all well and good, but the team that you are going to face next, the newly crowned number 1 club again in CONCACAF, Cruz Azul, and for 20 minutes, LAFC got taken to the mat. They were pushed, they were shoved, they were knocked all around BMO Stadium. Most of that stadium, 65% maybe, in blue Cruz Azul jerseys. It was absolutely electric, the away support there at BMO Stadium. And LAFC able to take body blow after body blow for the first 20 minutes, and a little bit of Muhammad Ali, maybe a little rope-a-dope. I asked Mark Dos Santos in the press conference, what changed after 20 minutes? And what he said was, well, I made an adjustment, but I'm not going to tell you what the adjustment is. I said, okay. All right, he's not going to tell us. I'll tell you what one of the adjustments was, Timmy K. The fact that David Martinez is a different kind of player in 2026 under Mark Dos Santos than he was under Steve Cherundolo. What a game for David Martinez in this one, Timmy.
Yeah, and you said you hit the nail on the head, right? He is a completely different player this season. He's really, we kind of joke, feeling your oats, but he's really come into his own this season under Dos Santos. He really... Ananda mentioned it earlier about confidence. The guy's confidence is through the roof. I think under Cherundolo, it wasn't quite there. You saw flashes of it, bits and pieces. But now under Dos Santos, I think he's just got the confidence to be on the ball, to take the shot, to make the pass, and not worried about getting yanked and put on the bench for 2 games.
Yeah, and Nanda, before we look ahead to LAFC's version of that Austin game, a game in Portland right before they travel to Cruz Azul to play their leg, I got to ask you, we saw FC Cincinnati up 3-0 in their first leg against Tigres, and then they went down to Tigres and got absolutely hammered 5-1. Now, I know this is a very different defense for LAFC than it is maybe for FC Cincinnati. But what do they have to avoid? What do they have to do when they head down to Cruz Azul to avoid the same fate as an FC Cincinnati?
Yeah, they just have to really just keep doing the things that you've been doing on the defensive end, those repetitions, that muscle memory, that togetherness that LAFC's had. Of course, Hugo Lloris, hopefully he continues with the hot hand as well and makes a couple of big saves. But look, you keep it tight in the back. And then when you smell blood in terms of the counter, and you see Denny Wonga and Son and those guys streaking, you hit them in the right moments, right? And that's going to keep the opposition a little off balance to say, oh, we've got to think about what's behind us now. But, it's always tough to play Mexico, man. That crowd, the energy, all the whole atmosphere, all the elements are going against you. So it's just about keeping it tight and then just making sure you put in a professional performance and you follow the game plan. Because look, you two guys talked about David Martinez earlier, but Mark Dos Santos has done a hell of a job this year, not only from a man-to-management standpoint, but from a game plan standpoint, how he approaches the game with his team. Huge credit has to be given to a guy that everyone said, what's a first-year coach going to do, right? So huge credit to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, a trap game. We talked about what that Austin match could mean for the Galaxy right before you guys take on your second leg. LAFC has to travel to Portland and then probably straight down to Puebla after that one. It's a very weird travel schedule. I expect a lot of roster rotation in that one, maybe Hassal between the pipes. Expect a lot of Artem Smolyakov and Amin Boudry and Jude Terry and players who LAFC maybe doesn't rely on game in and game out for that match in Portland. It's going to be really interesting to see the pride that this club has right now to keep that shutout streak alive to start the season, if they'll be able to do that in Portland. And then, of course, the match on Tuesday, April 14th, down in Puebla, 8,000 feet up with the elevation. That's another aspect that, my goodness, I mean, just playing at elevation, it's going to be rough. But I want to say a huge thank you. Somebody who's elevated this show time in and time out. That would be Ananda Karana, one half of the Lacuna Galaxiana podcast. Thank you so much, Ananda, for staying with us for both these clubs. He doesn't even get a chance to say goodbye. Our technical director, Christian Giordani, saying, no, not going to happen. He's out of here. That's it. But it's you and me, Timmy K. And we're going to hear real quick from our friends over at National Core. National Core is one of the nation's largest nonprofit affordable housing developers and a proud sponsor of your MASL team, the Empire Strykers. At National Core, they believe that soccer has the power to transform lives just like they do. They believe in building strong communities on and off the field. And to learn more about National Core and their mission, head on over to nationalcore.org. And don't forget, we have a fantastic interview coming up in just a second. Want to remind everybody, though, since we were last on the air, Strikers had 2 matches. And unfortunately, their 2025 season, 2025-2026 season, came to an end in the city named after the Algonquin word for the good land. Of course, that is Milwaukee. It is a fantastic interview, albeit a tough one, to hear Berto Palmer, their captain, their interim head coach for the 2025-2026 season. Their do-it-all man have to go through the highs of winning the first match in Toyota Arena, and then unfortunately the loss in both the second leg and the mini game. So who better to hear from? Our producer, Gunnar Burnt, sat down with Berto Palmer. Oh, and Timmy K. That's right. I apologize. Gunnar and Timmy were there. So let's hear from Gunnar, Timmy, and captain, interim head coach, the most interesting man in indoor soccer, Berto Palmer.
All right. Thanks, guys. Today's guest hails from Jamaica, but since moving to Missouri as a young adult, he has become an absolute legend of the Major Arena Soccer League, having captained both the Kansas City Comets and the Empire Strykers over the course of a 12-year career. He is a 2-time MASL Defender of the Year, a 3-time MASL Elite 6 honoree. Most recently, he added another feather to his cap as he led his Strikers on a 4-game win streak and into the postseason as the team's backline anchor and interim head coach. Welcome back to Soccer in 60, Mr. Berto Palmer, Robert Palmer.
Thanks for having me. Great intro.
Appreciate that. People usually don't know that I write them, so it's rare credit that I'm getting. So I appreciate that. Berto, before we start, we should let our audience know that unfortunately the Strikers lost in the playoffs. Right, they were eliminated from the playoffs at Milwaukee after an emphatic win 6-3 at home. You guys lost 7-5 in Wisconsin, and then lost the decisive mini game, unfortunately, 2-0. Let's start with the win at Toyota Arena. Talk us through what your game plan was and how it played out in the end.
It was just mainly focused on us. That's been the primary thing since I've, been the coach, is just, especially us, just work on everything offensively, defensively, to where, we can make sure collect and, so much the opponent, always, for sure have to keep an eye on the opponent, and we just try to neutralize their main players, and just try to neutralize their top players that they have, once we can do that, we have players that will score. You know, it was 2-2 a half. You know, we were leading, we were controlling the game, and in no time, you know, the game got frantic, and you know, and that's indoor. You know, once a team get momentum, you know, in no time, and they could have, you know, even taken the lead going to halftime, and we just came back out, you know, as fresh, like a 0-0, and just try to pick up from the first quarter, and we just did that. You know, we go in the game prepared for what they were about to bring, and we just execute on our half and just try to control our, you know, emotions, and just try to play through the game. And remember, it's just one game, you know, it's because it's a series.
Yeah. Hey, Berto, let's move on to the away leg. It was the close battle that many expected. In the end, you guys fell just short. What did you think of the performance by your team? Was there anything that surprised you? What made the difference in the end?
Again, you look at playoff soccer, you know, I think when you go into playoff, the set pieces, power plays, these things play a massive part. And just to capitalize on these things, you know, obviously, you know, after losing, we can always look at individual performance, and then, you know, you had team performance involved as well. But they had their game plan, you know, a little bit different than what I expected, and you know, they came with it, and you know, try to corner and go about it how to suit us best while not getting out of our element of playing. Because at the end of the day, you look at it, we just start playing this type of way. So you know, I don't want to ever get out of our element too, what we're doing, but try to always adjust. You know, it's kind of like you're playing your offense, like tic-tac-toe, but you also have to play your defense. You know, they had a game plan and they executed on their part, and you know, it was one point the game was tied, and we had some momentum and control. We just, you know, didn't get over that hump of finding that goal to take the lead, and you know, and I felt like, I guess whatever team is leading just so far win the games. It seems that way, and they took the lead, and they end up winning the other games. We are the one that were leading, and we won those games. So
Right. Yeah. And then for everybody out there listening, I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the bigger picture. When you took over as player coach, the Strikers had, like you mentioned a minute ago, really truly their backs against the wall after losing a crucial game to Tacoma and dropping out of the playoff picture. You got them back above the line with 3 straight wins to close out the regular season. What were the key areas that you focused on to try and shift that momentum for the team?
it's just, you know, as a player before being a coach, you know, practicing with the guys and know what they're capable of is just, you know, giving responsibility to each individual, and also kind of, you know, in a sense, enhance some of our players to where to reach their maximum capabilities for the team to have success. And I just kind of, you know, added these things and just built on that. And as I said, this game is a momentum game to where, you know, wins follow you, and same losing also can follow you. So we know what we're up against, and in a sense too, we kind of had, you look at our games, a more veteran team towards the end.
Yeah.
To take that burden off, to be able to, because a lot of the guys they've been in that situation, you know, whether it's indoor, like, you know, being a veteran player. So, you know, it's just something as well to where, but still we have young players in, but that helps a lot because it's just, again, our backs against the wall, and we just fight and crawl and just fight our way through, and, you know, still stick to what we've been, we kind of practice, because the first game we didn't have any practice of what this was just thrown out there, and we did really good. And then, you know, after having some sessions with the guys, you know, and adding things and fine tuning some stuff, you know, they just executed on their part. So, you know, big kudos to the guys, you know, to step up.
And in case people aren't following, when you say for the first game, you're talking about when you came in, you really had no time to practice with the team. This was in the regular season when you played Milwaukee on the road and got a win there and got the win streak going. So that's what Berto's talking about there.
Yes.
And then played him again in the playoffs. So and then he had some time to practice with them before those games. But Berto, you talked about it. You played an excellent game in the opening leg against Milwaukee, which is pretty impressive given that the Wave contended for first place in the regular season, right? They were one of the teams that was up there, could have finished first, and also had the best attack in the league. In addition, as you just said, you only had a few weeks to implement completely new tactics, a new philosophy, while everybody else, all the other teams in the league, were able to fine-tune what they were doing throughout the season, throughout 5-6 months. How much of a disadvantage would you say that was heading into the playoffs?
At the end of the day, too, I look at it, yes, the other teams been playing a certain style and a certain way throughout. But there's always adjustment to where teams might have to go into and do something different, you know what I mean, which Milwaukee did in the second game, right? They did some of that throughout the season with their goalie up, right? So, they've been practicing that in a sense, but the way they kind of dropped off, that wasn't at home. I've never seen them, done something like that. It would have been nice to have been like season preparation to where, something to where the guys were able to have from the beginning and to the playoff and add in, different fine tune to always have. But you just got to give, the Wave credit. End of the day, they pulled through, and yes, they have somewhat advantage because they've been together for months doing that way of playing. We've been together for a couple weeks, and every, as I said, I try to focus so much on the team of what we need to do. It should be, we focus on what we are doing, but also the other team, but we didn't have time.
Yeah. Now, Berto, you've talked a bit about the challenge of switching back and forth between the roles of backline anchor and head coach during a match. Did that become easier from game to game? Did you maybe find a little psychological tricks that helped you take off one hat and put on the other?
Which, I shared with the guys, sometimes it's challenging to where, I'm in the more player side of things than the coach. I think the first 2 games, I was more able to switch in between of being the player, and also the coach. And I think St. Louis game was an example of that, to which, I shared with the team where I was more into the player side of things, emotion and even throwing the flag. That was more just kind of the player side rather than the coach, So that game just taught me that to, I have to learn to differentiate and be that for the team, especially being the head for the team, right? I don't want to pass down things to the guys to where it become an emotional game and just, hectic or chaotic for them. If I bring that calmness, when things are not going good, as it helps to calm the team down. So we were back against the wall regarding things like all the decisions that I've made was just, you have to make it to where just get past this rather than not thinking about, what, we need to play this player or need to do this because we didn't have time. Same with me, I didn't have time to kind of sometimes be able to learn and adjust and grow into that, but as the game goes on, goes on, throughout the end and the playoff, I've learned that, but, earlier in the season, if I would, it would be a different thing for me.
Yeah. So one thing that stood out late in the season were the crowds at Toyota Arena. After setting a franchise record in the regular season finale with nearly 7,900 people, the Strikers drew close to 4,000 for the quarterfinal home leg, despite having only 3 days in between And despite the game being on a Thursday and everybody fighting traffic to get there, being on the field, did the fan support feel different to you this season?
Oh, since even last year, it was just something that was brewing, and then this year too. Just as I told the fans, you guys were so loud to where my teammates can hear me, on the field, like I've been screaming, but you guys are so loud. I'm losing my voice trying to get my teammates, because the music is playing plus the fans, like they brought that energy, and it was just electric to have. I've played in front of a lot of people and fans, and nothing like when you have your home fans just being loud, going off, cheering goals, cheering, good defense saves, all that, and us, and then on top it off and win. But end of the day, for me, I look at it, the fans, they came out just want to see the team battling, playing hard, give their best, right? And just know that sometimes the result, doesn't always favor, the home team, but if the fans see you're trying, you're doing your best, they're going to come back and they want to support and be there because, it's the product too that you put out there. We keep putting out good product, it's going to bring even more fans to want to be a part of, because it's an experience for both, not just the fans, but also us as players.
Yep.
Awesome.
It definitely helps when you have Felipe Dutra, fellow defender Felipe Dutra, pounding his chest after he makes blocks. Really gets the fans going. I'll say that. But hey, Berto, before we let you go, I just want to make sure people understand there's a specific reason, right? You weren't picked out of a hat. You were picked to coach the Strikers because you have a coaching background, including with your alma mater, Park University, back in Missouri. You're still a top player in the league. You were, again, among the best defenders this season, while also bagging 17 attacking points in the home leg against the Wave. You had a goal, 2 assists. I want to say 4 blocks. I actually didn't double check that now, but incredible performance. Now that you've coached in the pros, how much do you still love playing and how much more are you drawn to coaching now?
For me, I've been, before I was playing, right? My coach, when I was younger age, always see me as a leader and someone who can coach. But sometimes they always say the coaches know best, just like parents, right? And I'm like, not so much. And then when I got in college and just get into coaching, at first I was, not shy, but not talkative like how I am on the field. And I just get into it and realize this is part of my calling to what I can help inspire and help, youth and just, share my knowledge. And I start loving it, and it just becomes something for me to where I love coaching. Like I normally coach off season, whether it's private group or just college or youth club soccer. But just to be here and coaching these guys and coaching the pros, like there's a lot of similarities, but it's just a little different in the aspect of because I'm still playing, right, and they're as their teammate, but just coaching them and the group, it was just fantastic, respectful, the energy, everything. Like the guys showed up, I appreciate all the effort, like day in, day out. Like, as the coach, the hard thing for me was just putting players, because everybody's working so hard, and obviously it's a good headache to have as a coach to where everybody wants to play. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
It's something that I love. Same with playing. I love playing, because I love to compete, and coaching give me that. The only thing is I can affect the game, but playing I can more so because I'm on the field. On the side,
Right.
sometimes I'm like, you should, do it. But, as a coach, that's why you try to get your team, so equipped and ready to go into these battles to where you're like not feeling like you should be the one stepping in to do that, you know what I mean, as a player. So it's tough, and I love playing. I still love playing and be there and be also an example for my teammates, being by the
Mhm.
side and going through these battles with them. Coaching you share that, but when you're playing and being next to the person, you actually can feel it even more.
Yeah.
The energy and what's happening. Because sometimes seeing from the outside, it's different. Just like us when we watch soccer, everyone from outside can see the passes, see this, but inside the field, you're like, things seem fast and just chaotic. We don't, you know what I mean? So, being on the field it's always something that I love to keep doing.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, whichever way your career goes after this season, you're an asset either way. Whether you're on the field or you're on the bench. I almost said on the sideline. We don't really have sidelines anymore, but you're an asset either way, and you're also an asset whenever you come on the show. So really appreciate your time and the insight today. Congratulations on a great run to close out the season. Thank you so much for your time today, Robert Berto Palmer. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Berto. We appreciate you, buddy.
Timmy, it's tough because we know how much he put on his back this season, especially towards the end of it. I want to say a big thank you to Berto Palmer for, again, becoming an incredible member of the Soccer in 60 interview family. All right, Angel City time. And it was a tough one to start out. Look, they are the class of the league heading into April. You've got the coach of the month of March in Alex Strauss. You have the player who I believe you're the one that called that she was going to lead the club in scoring this season, Svandis Jonsdottir, being named the player of the month in March. And unfortunately, when that calendar turned to April, they got smacked in the face by a very tough Orlando Pride club. They're about to take a 3-week international break, so this is the only match that we need to talk about, Timmy. But Barbara Banda kept mostly in check by a fantastic Sarah Gordon, who we were talking on the last couple episodes. Where's Sarah Gordon? They were keeping their ace up their sleeve in the pocket there for somebody like Barbara Banda. It was a kind of a sloppy affair, right? Both goals coming off of chaotic sequences in the box for Orlando. A tough one leading into the international break.
Yeah, and we had talked about Sarah Gordon a couple of different times, and I've been chatting it up with a few other Angel City homers, and they were saying the same type of things that we were. She's been having a tough go of it lately. But you're right, she kept Banda in check the entire game. Her best performance of the season, clearly, and to be able to have. The result is kind of a drag, right? 2-1 loss, but it was a sloppy game towards the end. You got all 3 goals in the last 10 minutes of the game, and it's a tough one. But the reality is this: the Angel City is still playing at a very high level. I think you got to, you have one, you lay an egg every now and then right around Easter. So I'm not going to be too concerned about it, right? The Easter Bunny came a little early on Friday night, so not overly concerned about it.
Yeah, and look, let's talk about it. Despite the loss, some clubs have already played 5 matches. Angel City just with 4 in league play. Still an NWSL best 10 goals scored on the season. An NWSL best +6 differential. They're tied for second in the league with assists. And they've done so, by the way, here's the incredible thing, Timmy. 10 goals on just 14 shots on target over the course of the season. You're talking about a club like San Diego Wave, who right now is in first place. Angel City is not far behind. They've registered 37 shots on target this season. Angel City with just 14. So definitely some things for Alex Strauss to continue to pull the strings, continue to talk about. Unfortunately, though, over this international break, he's going to be without 9 of his ladies there for Angel City FC. We're talking Emily Sams and Giselle Thompson called into the U.S. women's national team. Evelyn Shores and Riley Tiernan called into the under-23s for the United States. Kennedy Fuller ready to captain the U.S. women's under-20s. Ari Borges and Miara News for the Brazilian women's national team. Casey Fair for South Korea. And your pick to click, as they like to say, Svandis Jonsdottir for that Icelandic women's national team. I got to ask you something that's real interesting, Timmy K, and this one might be a little out of left field, but Casey Fair, she plays regularly for the South Korean women's national team. Since she started with them in 2023, 11 matches, 6 starts, 492 minutes, playing great for the South Korean women's national team. With Angel City since 2024, 90 minutes total over the course of 5 matches. What gives? How is it so hard to get Casey Fair out there on the pitch?
I think it's just what we've already been talking about. You've got to just step up and be better than the other person that's in your position. And right now, you talked about embarrassment of riches with LAFC. Angel City under Alex Strauss actually has gotten to that point now. And unfortunately for Casey Fair, it's a tough lineup to crack. And she'll get in a bunch of more minutes this year, especially with the rest of the season coming up. It's a long way to the end, but I think it's just very difficult to crack for anybody to crack that starting 11 right now.
Yeah, you're talking about the likes of Cindy LaRue and Kristen Press, and obviously what we saw from Claire Emsley and Alyssa Thompson, and now you got Svein Jon's daughter. It's got to be real tough. You're absolutely right for this young lady to get minutes. Remember, she's still a teenager too. I mean, oh my goodness.
And that's the other thing, right?
Talented.
She's so young, and most of Angel City is super young, which is great for the long term. So I'm not overly concerned about it. She'll be just fine. By the end of the season, she'll have 400 minutes for Angel City.
I love it. All right, you heard it here. He already called Svein Jon's daughter. So, all right, let's get into Orange County Soccer Club. 2 matches this last week, 2 very different results to me, of course. A 1-0 loss to New Mexico United at the Champ in just kind of a lackluster offensive effort for Orange County in that one. A tough foul by Alex Rando, right? He got called for the foul, which gave the PK to Niall Reed-Steven, and he, of course, puts the penalty away. 12 shots, but just 1 on target for Orange County in this one. Why is it so hard for the offense to get rolling right now early on in the season?
Yeah, that's the biggest question mark with Orange County. I mean, going into the game, they're undefeated in league play. 2 wins and a tie, a couple of ties. I think the reality is that they've just got to work on that in practice. They just have to continue to be on it and just not flail and put one, half a dozen over the bar, or just they gotta take out a page out of Angel City's and just start putting things on frame. There's no other way to do it, and just shoot at the middle of the net if you have to. Make the guy make a save, right? If nothing else, at least make the goalkeeper make the save, because he could fumble it. You drop it, parry it right to one of your other guys. And I think if you start doing that, I think the goals will start coming in bunches. Yeah,
you put the ball in a dangerous spot. Literally anything can happen. However, 6 matches into the season, and we haven't talked about the 6th yet, but we will. Defense has given up just 3 goals. And you can't ask Orange County's defense to do anything more than they did against New Mexico United. 4 total shots allowed in the entire match over 90 minutes, just the 1 shot on target. Unfortunately, it's a PK, and obviously those are problematic, but an incredible defensive effort. And then finally, they did find their offensive legs a little bit. It's Lyle McKinnon, and the kid looked fantastic, got behind the defense a couple of times for Orange County. They also host San Antonio, who at the time was also undefeated themselves in USL Championship. And it's nice to see them get back to their winning ways at the Champ in this 2-0 victory.
Yeah, and this is one of the things where, obviously Coach Stone went and talked to him. We just mentioned about putting the ball in dangerous spots and put it on a frame. They got dominated on time of possession. We look at that, and it's over, 68, 69% for San Antonio. But the only thing that matters is what's up on the scoreboard. And in this particular match, you mentioned McKinnon getting the goal. Then you look at Bazzini. He gets the other goal, and they ended up winning 2-0. And it's okay that you let the other guys play around with the ball at midfield and not let them into the attacking third, because if you look at the final scoreline stats, Orange County again played lights out. Rando comes off of that kind of I wouldn't say lackluster performance, because he gives up just the 1 goal against New Mexico. But what happens is the team rallied around, and they really kept the ball out of the net and made Alex Randos a nice, easy evening.
And that's something that San Antonio has done regularly over the course of the start of the season. They came in with a 400-plus minute shutout streak that Orange County was able to end quickly. And like you mentioned, it was Bazzini all along cleaning up the mess inside the box for that second goal. Chris Hagart, by the way, looked great in this one for Orange County, but that's no surprise. He's done that over and over again. McKinnon almost getting a second one there at the hour mark on that beautiful header play. And let's talk about Rando. You mentioned him real quick. He had a massive save in the 72nd minute. And look, we've seen it time and time again. If a club is able to get one late, now they feel the confidence that they might be able to get an equalizer. But that save by Alex Rando in the 72nd minute off of an incredible set-piece effort, that really helped Orange County be able to keep that clean sheet, keep the momentum going, and finish out that match over 90 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. We've been talking all night about confidence. And when you have the ability of your keeper to make that type of save, it just proves the fact that the rest of the team is going to be like, okay, here's what we need to do the rest of the match and keep Alex, to be a little less active the rest of the match and be God, what's the best way to say it is just be more confident about it through the rest of the match.
Yeah, and look, he's holding off Tet Cadano, right? Because we know Tet wants to play as well. He had a great end to last season. It's going to be interesting to see the club, though, now, because they get to travel to Tulsa, Oklahoma for their next one, Saturday, April 11th. It's always hard for the County boys when they're traveling all the way across country like that. And Tulsa's not an easy place to play. But that being said, you're talking about a club that after 4 matches, they've got just the 1 win in their season so far. They have a negative goal differential, just 5 points on the board. So it'll be nice for the County boys to be able to continue this momentum. Oh, by the way, the first place County boys, I know El Paso has a couple of matches in hand, but the first place Orange County Soccer Club right now, as we're nearing their 7th match of this USL Championship season. And I'm real excited, Timmy, because we talked about 14 matches that were either looking ahead or we did some quick recaps and talked about all the wonderful stuff. But now we get to talk about the best 11 for these 5 clubs. And boy, oh boy, did our producer Gunnar Burnt have some work cut out for him. Let's talk about the goalkeeper, Brandon Gomez, who was absolutely fantastic in between the pipes for Empire Strykers and their home match against Milwaukee. Captaining the club is our interview subject and the most interesting man in indoor soccer. Berto Palmer for his effort in that same match at Toyota Arena against Milwaukee. Eddie Segura for LAFC against Cruz Azul. Sergi Palencia for LAFC against Orlando. In the midfield, David Martinez and Mark Delgado for LAFC. Martinez for his efforts against Cruz Azul. Delgado against Orlando. Marco Fabian, his game at Milwaukee in the final full match of the season. And Marco Royce for the Galaxy against Minnesota and Toluca. That's how good he was. He's on here for 2 separate matches. At the forward spot, 2 that are no surprise. Sonny and Denis back at it once again for their exploits against Orlando. And Tyler Boyd for his efforts against Orlando as well. That's 7 for LAFC, 1 for the Galaxy, and 3 for the Empire Strykers. Alex Rando and Marcelo Palomino, your boys almost made it for Orange County, but they didn't make it. But I got to say, Timmy, I want to get your thoughts on Marcelo Palomino. He's the honorary mention or honorable mention, if you will, in this one, but he's been great after coming over from the Houston system.
Yeah, he's been a very strong addition to Orange County, and this is one that we talked about on the show a few weeks ago after he signed, and it was one of those things where when you look at it, you have somebody with that type of experience, and he's still a younger dude, right? So he can come in, he can fit into a system that Coach Stone is running. And, when we talked to Nico Ben Alcazar last week, everybody knows everybody. They all grew up playing together, whether it was in the youth system for U.S. men's national team or whatever it's been. So a lot of these guys are already very familiar with each other, or at least the style of play. So he fits in perfectly with the club.
Yeah, and let's go back to the Empire Strykers real quick here. You know, in baseball, they call a 100-pitch or less shutout a Maddox. They call a goal, an assist, and a fight a Gordie Howe hat trick. They're going to have to name something after Berto Palmer. They call it the Palmer, a goal, an assist, and a block. He had a goal, 2 assists, and 4 blocks in his effort at home at Toyota Arena against Milwaukee. And Brandon Gomez, I mean, absolutely fantastic. I believe he had 14 saves in the match as an indoor keeper. That is
huge.
A spectacular amount. And, oh, by the way, an assist as well. So getting offensive with it. And I think that the biggest takeaway for the Strikers is the incredible end to the season that one Marco Fabian had. A goal, an assist, and 3 blocks. So he scored a Palmer of his own, if you will, in that match in Milwaukee. And I know so many fans, so many supporters, Timmy, come out to Toyota Arena to watch Marco Fabian play. He is the superstar, the former gold medalist, Olympian, and really helps put butts in seats. But an incredible end of the season for the Strikers, although it didn't end the way they wanted it to.
Yeah, and you look at the last 2 games, and we talked about it with Berto, but you put almost 7,900 in for the season finale, and then you put another almost 4,000 in just 3 days later. The MSL, and especially the Empire Strykers, is really taken off in the Inland Empire, the Empire in Ontario. It's one of the best arenas to go see a game in general. And just to see those types of things with 12,000 people basically coming over the course of 2 games, it's incredible and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this on Thursday, which you most likely are, it'll be some interesting news in the MASL as well. We'll see what the big announcement is. Very excited. They teased it on their social media. We don't tease you. We give you a 1-hour episode talking about all 5 major clubs here in the Southland. And once again, big thank you to my co-host, Timmy K, obviously Ananda as well. This has been Soccer in 60, brought to you by SAC Health System. We talked about 14 matches this episode. Let's see how many we can bring at you for our next one next week. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget, like and subscribe to both the YouTube and however you listen to podcasts. And once again, thank you for listening to Soccer in 60, brought to you by SAC Health System.
Have a good